Hey, what's up, Blue Team? Time for another video in my series on data integrity. So today we're going to be talking about the 3210 rule. In case you missed any of the previous videos, I really recommend that you check them all out because today we're going to be tying together all the information that we've been talking about over the course of this whole series. As with the previous videos, the majority of this video is going to be mostly about the best practices on a philosophical level, rather than a tutorial on any specific software or tool to achieve the goal of protecting your data. The obvious rule of thumb when it comes to not losing your data is that if you don't want to lose something, you need to back it up. Fortunately for us, though, there's actually a highly actionable and extremely specific golden rule when it comes to taking backups. That rule is called the 3210 rule. Actually, it's usually just called the 321 rule, and I totally just made up that part about the zero, but trust me, the rule works even better when you do it my way with the zero. But we'll get to that bit in just a sec. The 3210 rule is an industry standard because it's so simple and easy to understand that pretty much anyone can conceptualize how they can apply it to their own life, if they actually think about it. The 3210 rule goes like this. If you want to be reasonably sure that any given file you have is resistant to most forms of risk, you need to have at least 3 copies of it, stored across at least 2 different kinds of storage media, with at least 1 copy in a different physical location from your other copies, and 0 electricity going to at least 1 copy. If there's only one thing that you're going to take away from this entire series on data integrity, just let it be the 3210 rule. It's that important. No rule is perfect, obviously, but really, if you just stringently follow the 3210 rule, you'll have a good head start on protecting yourself from most sources of data loss. And that's it. That's the whole 3210 rule. It really is that simple. Actually, we can walk through and demonstrate how that works. Last episode, we did a comprehensive discussion on pretty much all the most common threats that pose a risk to your data and what might make you lose data. If you haven't seen that video, I highly recommend clicking over to watch it. To summarize, the threats that we discussed in the last video were hardware failure, data corruption, user error, natural disasters, takedowns and removals, deprecation, software security threats, and physical security threats. But in this video, let's talk about what the 3210 rule can and can't do to help you mitigate the risk of those threats. First, let's talk about hardware failure and data corruption. If you're compliant with the 3210 rule, you have at least 3 copies of your data. So at least 3 separate devices need to fail before your data is lost. Not to mention at least 2 different kinds of devices for which the likelihood of both failing at the same time is pretty low. That being said, you still got to be careful here because data corruption can happen silently to where you save a file that you don't use very much, it gets corrupted, and then the next time you go to read that file back, it doesn't open. Depending on the timeline and on the schedule of your backups, you could very easily have copied a corrupted version of the file over all of your backups, all 3 of them, before you even realized the file that you were trying to access was corrupted. That's a topic that's long enough for its own video in terms of how we deal with that. So hold that thought for now, since we'll be talking about that one in another video. Moving on, let's talk about user error. The 3210 rule has you covered here pretty good because it's pretty hard to wipe out 3 copies of data all at once with just one stupid command. This is where that 0 in the 3210 really comes into play though. On this channel, we don't underestimate the sheer power of our own stupidity. So I know that most who use the 3210 rule aren't going to be able to do this in just one decision, but stay with me for just a sec. So let's say that you somehow do manage to become the next Olympic champion of the Digital Darwin Awards and successfully send a command that would delete all your data from every single place that you currently have it backed up. That would suck a lot, right? Well, you physically cannot do that. Like, it's literally impossible if you have at least 1 copy of your data that isn't plugged in. So yeah, 3210. The 0 matters. Anyway, the next threat we talked about was natural disasters. Yet again, 3210 saves the day here, because if you have at least 1 copy of your data in another physical location, when a natural disaster strikes and burns your house down or something, you'll still have a spare copy of your data somewhere else. The next threat we talked about in my last video was takedowns and removals and data being removed from the internet. Well, if you save a local copy of everything you like off the internet, you'll mitigate the risk on this one. This is kind of a stretch to say that the 3210 rule applies here, but if you're locally saving your data, you should be keeping at least multiple copies of it as per the 3210 rule, and you'll still be kind of covered. Again, kind of a stretch, But this situation isn't exactly what this rule applies to. The next threat that we discussed was deprecation. When it comes to deprecation, there's two things that can get deprecated with your data. Either the devices that your data is stored on can become deprecated, or the files of data themselves can become deprecated. 3210 helps us here because if you store your data on at least two different forms of media, then hopefully, even if one data storage device that you have a backup on becomes deprecated and no longer readable or accessible because the technology to read it is no longer available, you can still pull your data off of a different form of data storage where you might have other copies. So 3210. The unfortunate part is, though, you still got to be careful because 3210 is great, but it's not bulletproof. If you're storing files that can only be opened by a special program or app, it doesn't matter how many copies of that file you have if you lose access to the app that can open your files, or if that app doesn't run on a newer version of your operating system or on a new device that you have. You still got to make sure that you're using apps that save and export your data in formats that can easily be opened by other applications and programs, because 3210 will not save you from that. Now, let's talk about software security threats like ransomware and viruses. When it comes to these, this is where that 0 I added to the 3210 is really damn important. You can't hack a device that isn't turned on. So as long as you have at least one backup that you leave unplugged, no hacker is ever going to be able to delete every last backup you have saved, no matter how much digital access they might get to any systems that you have data stored on. Finally, let's talk about physical security threats. Yet again, 3210. I know I keep saying it. I know that I sound like a broken record, and it's probably really annoying to be hearing that phrase over and over and over again, but it is that important. When it comes to physical security threats, an offsite backup comes super in handy yet again, because someone can break into your house, steal all your shit, but they won't get all of your data if you have a spare copy stored somewhere else physically. Also, if you use encryption on your backups, it is significantly harder to tamper with a backup that's turned off than one that's turned on. So yet again, someone accessing your data is going to have a harder time with something that's unplugged. So that 0 is super important. At least one backup with no electricity going to it. Just do it, okay? Please. As you can see, it's not perfect. There are still some things that'll still be gotchas with the 3210, but this one golden rule can still mitigate most of the risk that your data faces. But there is one golden gotcha for our golden rule. It may sound dumb and obvious, but the only way the 3210 rule actually works is if you regularly check your backups and verify that they still work on a regular schedule. Some dumbass on the internet once coined the term Schrodinger's backup, and I really love that. To make it very clear, the concept of Schrodinger's backup refers to the idea that the quality and usability of data stored on any backup is unknown until you actually try to restore from it. In the second episode of this series, we discussed extensively how no form of storage is bulletproof. So the best way to prevent yourself from getting completely screwed over by a bad backup is to check them zealously. Put a regular calendar notification once every 6 months on your phone and plug all your backups in and make sure that you can still access all the files stored on them. Also, when you do that, make sure that you're actually checking them, not just like plugging in and looking at it and being like, yeah, that's okay. You want to open up at least a couple files and make sure they actually open to make sure your file manager or your operating system isn't playing tricks on you when you're trying to review your backup. Anyway, that's the 3210 rule in a nutshell. I hope that over the course of this video, I've made it exceedingly clear why this one rule is so ridiculously important. If you want to protect your files from being lost, you absolutely should think about using the 3210 rule because it will save you from so much stupid shit. Just one rule. And if you can actually do it, make yourself follow it, it will save you so much heartache. Earlier in this video, I mentioned how difficult it can be to deal with data corruption and files silently being corrupted. So make sure to tune in next time and we'll talk about that. Anyway, I hope you learned something from this video and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. As you can God damn it.